On February 16th, 2009, 70-year-old Sandra Harold was at home in Stamford, Connecticut with her 14-year-old son, Travis, and Travis was throwing a fit. Now, as most of you will already know, Sandra could not just ask Travis what was wrong or reason with him because Travis was not a human being. He was an enormous chimpanzee. He had been purchased by Sandra and her husband, who had recently died, 14 years ago when Travis was just a few days old for $50,000. And then Travis was raised in the Harold household basically as a human being. At this point, he was morbidly obese. He was 250 pounds. Obviously, he was fully sexually developed, and he had just recently started to kind of act out, and that's what he was doing on this day. Now, there's no human in the world that could physically restrain a chimpanzee, let alone one this size. So really, Sandra's only option was to try and find something to make him happy, try and appease him. So that's what she was doing. She had found some of his favorite food. She gave him fish and chips. And then when that didn't work, she gave him a big piece of ice cream cake. But he ate that, and that still didn't work. So eventually she found some of his favorite tea, and then she crushed up some Xanax and gave him that in the tea. And he drank it, but it did not calm him down. Eventually, at some point during this tirade, Travis grabbed Sandra's car keys and, just throwing a fit, ran out of the house with them, trying to keep the car keys away from Sandra. Well, Sandra didn't really know what else to do other than to call the only other person that had spent some serious time around Travis. That was one of her employees, a 55-year-old woman named Charla Nash. Now, Charla did not particularly like Travis. In fact, she was kind of afraid of him. But, her friend, 70-year-old Sandra, didn't really have a lot of other options. And, Charla knew that. And so Charla agreed that, yes, she would come help calm Travis down, try and get him back into the house. So Charla got in her car, she drove over to Sandra's house, and when she got there, she reached over and grabbed one of Travis's favorite toys that she had in her car. It was a Tickle Me Elmo. When she got out of her car and Travis, who was out in the yard, saw Charla with that Tickle Me Elmo, his Tickle Me Elmo, he went absolutely crazy. He charged Charla, he tackled her to the ground, and in no particular order began to tear her apart. He grabbed big pieces of her scalp and one by one tore these giant pieces of scalp until basically her whole scalp was gone. At the same time, he's biting her face. He either bit or ripped off her nose, her eyebrows. He peeled off her eyelids. He bit off her lips, her cheeks. He ripped off her jaw. Eventually, he reached into her eye sockets after he had broken her orbital bones and pulled out her eyes. He ripped off her entire left hand. Her right hand, he ripped off almost all of it, leaving only her thumb. So all the fingers and most of the palm he ripped off. Now, while all this is going on, Sandra, 70-year-old Sandra, the owner, did not stand by just idly. She had raised Travis from a baby and treated him like her real human son. But watching him kill a human being, even though it broke her heart, she tried to go out and stop Travis. She ran out there with a shovel and began to beat Travis with it. This did nothing. So eventually she went and grabbed a kitchen knife, and then she ran up behind Travis and stabbed him in the back with that kitchen knife. And again, this broke her heart, and Travis turned around and looked at her with a look that Sandra described as, "What are you doing, Mom?" But eventually, Travis just went back to tearing Charla apart. Now, Sandra, when she went to go stab her son, Travis, she looked down and she saw the state that Charla was in, and clearly Charla was dead. So after she stabbed Travis, Sandra ran back to Sandra's car, she locked herself inside, and she called the police. And this 911 call really does sound fake when you listen to it at first. You hear this chimpanzee, Travis, screaming in the background as it tears Charla apart. And of course, Sandra is just freaking out. She's screaming about this chimp who's tearing her friend apart. And the operator doesn't really believe her at first. He thinks it's a prank. But of course, it wasn't a prank. And so EMS and police are called, and they both get on their way. EMS gets there first, but they can't get out of the car and go approach the scene because Travis is still tearing Charla apart. The attack lasted for a full 12 minutes. Well, just shortly after, police did show up. When they got there, Travis looked over at one of the police cars. He leaves Charla's body, runs over to the police car where he bashes out one of the side view mirrors. Then he runs over to the driver's side and rips open the driver's side door of this police vehicle. The police officer inside who was driving barely had time to get to his sidearm and fire 4 rounds at Travis, striking him at least 3 times, but I think he hit him all 4 times. When he did so, Travis screamed and defecated right there on the ground, and then Travis kind of hobbled his way back to the house and made it inside of the house, where he made it almost all the way back to his bed, to his cage. He grabbed onto his bedpost before he collapsed on the ground and died. Charla, who was lying on the ground when police and Sandra got out and were looking for Travis before they knew he had died next to his bed, they all thought that Charla was dead. It wasn't until she raised up what was left of her arms in the air that one of the police officers said, "Oh my God, she's alive." And then, of course, EMS came running up and tried to get her attention. And amazingly, she survived. She had some brain damage and, of course, all the other injuries I previously mentioned she sustained. She went directly into 7 hours of surgery, basically just to save her life. They tried to kind of reattach one of her hands, but it was rejected. Eventually, she was given a face transplant. So that's where they take a dead person's face, a cadaver face, and put it on you. She got that. She rejected that face at some point, but they were able to give her meds to where the face was actually accepted. Like I said, she did have some brain damage, so she has to live in a special home where she receives, special care. She obviously is 100% blind because Travis pulled out both of her eyes. But she, of course, is alive, and she's making the best of it. She won a lawsuit against the Herald estate for some million dollars, and then she had another huge multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Stamford, Connecticut. I don't know if she won that or not. 15 months after this attack, Sandra, who was then 72, passed away due to an aneurysm. And Travis, who had been cremated, was interred with Sandra. They were buried together.
How's your friend?
No, I can't. She's dead. She's dead.
Why are you saying that she's dead?
She's dead. He ripped her apart.
He ripped what apart? Her face?
Everything.
He ripped her apart?
I think I'm gonna faint. I think I'm gonna pass out.
No,